One of my clients paid me $40,000 to give a 1-hour speech. $40,000 is twice what I paid for my first home in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1970s. I bought a house literally for $20,000. I'm going to show you in this video how I got that much money for one speech, how anyone would get that much money for a speech like that, and how you can think about the value you bring to your clients and customers and see where the price points are, the break points between this level of value and that level of value. In the world of professional speaking, if you were to go out and hire a speaker for a convention, you could get speakers that would show up for the exposure. Just let me on the platform. Yeah, that'll be good enough. They'd be happy with that. And they're probably worth about that much. And there are speakers that wouldn't show up if you offered them $100,000. Seriously. There are people like former presidents and world leaders, people like that, people like huge business titans who don't think it would be worthwhile to go give a 1-hour speech, even if they could get $500,000 for it, because there's a higher and better use of their time. Okay, so somewhere between I'll speak if you'll buy lunch and please give me enough to buy my entire neighborhood in one transaction, somewhere between those two, there's a place where you and I can live. All right, well, let's look at what separates them. First off, at the higher levels of speaking fees, if you talk to speakers bureaus around the country, around the world, and I've done that as past president of the National Speakers Association in the USA, I've met with speakers bureau owners all over the world. And I've been listed with almost all of the top speakers bureaus in the United States. And I've been in their offices, spoken with their staff, looked at their files, and examined how they sell the personalities and celebrities that they represent. It's really interesting that sometimes a speaker who's charging, let's say, $10,000 might have more credentials, more value, and even do a better job on the stage than a person they're spending $50,000 to get there. One time when my fee was about, I think, $5,000, I was speaking in Boston, and the other speaker on the program just before me was Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was the number 3 person in the hierarchy of USA politics, Speaker of the House of Representatives. There's the President, the Vice President, and then the Speaker of the House. Tip O'Neill was the other speaker. You know how much he got paid? Way more than $50,000. I got $5,000, he got $50,000. Why was he brought in? Not because he had a good message, because of who he was as a celebrity. He was a personality that everyone in that audience wanted to stand and get their picture taken with. You know, we take photos, go selfie, right? So that was his main value in being there. Now, he was a good storyteller too, and he had a lot to say, and he could talk about world affairs, but he wasn't brought in for that. He was brought in for sizzle, for celebrity value, to get other people to say, I want to go to that convention so I can meet the Speaker of the House. I was brought in for a very different reason, to teach a specific skill, a skill that I call relationship selling, where you get the sale, but you also get an ongoing connection with the person that's worth even more than that one sale. So, if you have a limited amount of time and you've got a person that's being hired to teach a skill and a person that's being hired to show up and smile and be nice, if you're running short of time, whose time do you cut? Well, if you're making a sensible, rational decision, you would cut his time because he's shown his main value by being there, telling a few stories and shaking a bunch of hands. You wouldn't cut my time, but I didn't have the power he had. So they cut my time, and I had to compress my message into a shorter time frame. So that was me at that level. How did I get $40,000 for a speech? Well, years later, I had written multiple books. And one of my latest books is called What to Do When You're the Speaker. And this is not a book for speaker beginners. This is a book for people who are already pretty confident speakers. And it talks about the things that professional speakers have to deal with and how to do it well. I'd written, at this point, 27 books, been on all the main stages around the world. I had a lot to bring to the table. And that's why I was able to command a fee of $40,000 for one one-hour speech. But I also had celebrity value. The group that hired me was from Australia. The meeting was in Macau, China. And I was flown from the United States to Macau to do this appearance because I had been to Australia 10 times on lecture tours. I was well known in Australia at the time. My books were selling in Australia. So there was celebrity value to having me there. And why 1 hour instead of a few hours to teach a skill? Because they figured my book and my training materials could teach the skills. I could show up and make the people want to learn the skills. And that's exactly what happened. So that's how you get to the higher levels of speaking fees. What do you do starting out? Figure out your revenue model. How much money do you need to make? Who are you going to be serving? What's it worth to teach them a particular skill or technique or bring them certain information? Read the room to see what's the value of what you bring to the table. One of the things that I've done over the years is I've worked on my craft as a speaker. When I first started out, I participated in a junior chamber of commerce, JC's. They call it the 4 States Leadership Training Seminar. And I put my hat in the ring to compete in that seminar. They had a competition for speakers that was going to end up with a winner and a second place and a third place. And this was in 1974. Yeah, I know you weren't born in 1974. Maybe your parents were. No? Well, anyway, it was a long time ago, 1974. So I show up, rosy-cheeked kid, eager to compete, and I came in third. And you think, well, yeah, but later you won first. But no, that's the last speaking contest I ever participated in. But I had determined at the time that what I wanted to do for a living was be a full-time paid professional speaker. Now, I'm in my 70s. I've been speaking over 50 years. And I've always been, in my career, a professional speaker. No other path. I've written all these books. Why? Because people wanted my speech in a more substantial form to take home with them and study. I've created online courses. Why? Because people wanted to be able to be led by me at their own pace and their own time through the learning process. I've published articles, all kinds of works around the world over the years to get my message into other forms that could be consumed and also that would generate revenue. The books generate royalties. I get royalties off of the online training programs. Some of these are built into the training that I do with my own clients for whom I'm serving as a mentor or a coach. And it's all a part of the revenue stream. But at first it was, hey, if you'll buy lunch and pay me, let's say $100, I'll be your keynote speaker. I mean, I was almost that lame going about it. But I ended up, the first year I was speaking full time, I ended up doing $10,000 in fees. Now, that's a lot of speeches I was giving to get $10,000 because my typical fee was just over $100. The second year, I generated $18,000 in speaking fees. The third year, $28,000, then $36,000, then $48,000, then $86,000, big jump. And then it went over $100,000. And I was doing at one point 120 talks a year out of town, meaning 240 round trips every year. Now you say, well, wow, you're never home. No, actually, if you do the numbers, I was home more than 200 days a year. But I had to manage my life in such a way that it allowed me to be constantly on the road, constantly, instead of on the road and only speaking, I had to also be selling and generating interest and creating materials that could be published and working with the distributors that were selling my materials. I had to do all of that as well. You say, wow, too much of a job. No, when you get your systems down and you're clear on what you're doing and who you're doing it for and what value you're bringing, things get simpler and simpler. And it becomes a routine that you can manage. And you go from winning a little third place trophy in 1974 in Arkansas to where you're winning the Golden Gavel Award from Toastmasters International alongside Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and people like that. I was elected president of the National Speakers Association. They gave me this old microphone as a thank you gift at the end of my year. All of this is possible for you in your field. Think of what is the top of the top of the top of your particular field of interest. That's possible for you. If it's possible for them, you could do it. And you're probably going to have to start out participating in the lower level events, charging the lower fees or no fees, paying your dues to get really, really good at what you do so that it's worth paying to come see you do it.